Thank you, everybody, for joining us this morning to kick off ADA. Certainly a great way to do this is just a little bit of a fireside chat format. And one of the things maybe to ease a little bit into ADA, Ken and I thought we'd come up with a little bit of a fun fact about ourselves. And now, I'll be honest, is that it's been a while since anybody, it's not a competition, but it's been a while since anybody was able to beat my fun facts. And Ken, you're our esteemed guest this morning. Perhaps you want to start first.
Well, my children would tell you that I'm a decidedly not fun person. So I don't know how to compete with you in this match, but I thought I might bring a few. Can I have multiple fun facts in order to try and beat your...
Please, all shots on goal.
I'm a pretty good juggler.
Really?
Yeah.
That is a good fun fact. I like that one.
Yeah. I failed at a third grade math.
Really?
Yeah. That's good. And my boss, when I got this job, told me I should treat this as my terminal role, to which I responded, do you think I'll die in it? There's a few fun things.
There's sleeves of Phoenix golf balls over there, so maybe Ken later can show us some juggling skills. Okay, you've been waiting for my fun fact. Silliest fun fact ever. My father delivered Taylor Swift. So I'll let the audience decide whose fun fact is better. It's not a competition, but hey, great way to start off here at the SACS conference and get some real insight. So I had the pleasure last year in Chicago at the Marriott Marquis of randomly being introduced to Ken, and he was just in his new role, taking over as head of Lilly Global Cardiometabolic Health, and now it's 1 year later. So how are you thinking about where you are 1 year later, some key learnings, and then just maybe your outlook for kicking off ADA here?
Well, first of all, it's a pleasure to be here, and I agree. It's great to kick off ADA in this way. I am about a year into this privileged opportunity to lead Lilly's largest division, and certainly an area of clearly mutual interest in this room. There's many things I've learned over the course of the last year, but the thing that's first and foremost on my mind that Jay nicely teased up is the scale of what we're doing here. I think our industry, for a variety of reasons, in the late 90s, early 2000s, probably driven by PRA and the advent of monoclonal antibodies and things along those lines, heavily piled into specialty disease areas. And that, to some extent, came at the extent of medicines that could have a large population impact. I think now we're seeing a little bit of a reversal there, which I find encouraging. It's not that we don't need great new medicines for cancer and autoimmunity and rare disease, but we also need medicines that are aimed at some of the greatest challenges we face, things like obesity and all of the ripple effect complications and comorbidities, as well as things like Alzheimer's. So I'm really encouraged by that progress. That's been the best thing for me stepping back into this, is to reorient towards thinking at a population level. So that's my biggest learning.
Interesting. And then we're going to see some incredible science, not only from Lilly, but others here at ADA. How are you thinking about this as an emerging of a portfolio of options now related to serving the diverse set of patients all across the world?
Yeah, I think this was also set up nicely in the opening remarks, is, depending on which number you favor, 1 billion, 2 billion people living with overweight or obesity by 2035, I think we can all agree this is a large problem we're confronting, and it's unrealistic to expect that every person living with overweight, obesity, or other kinds of cardiometabolic disease will be well served by the same medicine. We fully expect this market to bifurcate and trifurcate and continue to segment into categories defined by individual persons' medical needs, of course, but also their preferences. And some patients may need greater weight loss. Some may want other metabolic benefits we can build in less frequent dosing. Some may want a higher quality of weight loss. Some may want different tolerability or better tolerability, less frequent dosing. All of these things we see as future plausible categories, and the approach we've taken is just to cover every square, in many cases multiple times, with the hope that Lilly will continue to be the leader here that brings forward a broad suite of options that we then also present to customers with a unified experience. When you think about Lilly Direct today, it's kind of you can get Zepbound or Foundayo. Maybe by 2030, there might be 5 medicines there in obesity, and more with each years to go. And we think that could be helpful as we think about this market emerging.
Interesting stuff there. When Lilly was introducing the science that it's bringing here at ADA, there was a really interesting set of words it used, which is the new era of choice in that May 28 press release. Is there something behind that? Is there something where Lilly's driving this era of choice? Is it more than just the comments you just made?
It's very much related to what I just said. On April 1st, we became a multi-product company in obesity. We expect to become a triple product company next year with hopefully the launch of retatrutide. We'll present those data tomorrow in both obesity and diabetes, but we have many more ideas in the works. Obviously, amylin is a big area of future growth, and then a lot of the sort of more exotic technologies or things we're pursuing as well. And ultimately, we think this just gives people the ability to start on a medicine that fits their needs, maybe switch or stay on different medicines and move around, and we want to be positioned to offer all of those things. So we do believe this is the beginning of an era of not just one size fits all treatment of this highly prevalent condition.
And feel free to ask me any questions too, Ken. But there was in our prep call, Ken said something really interesting, which was also really reflective at the same time, where it's not just Lilly versus Novo, and maybe that's the perception out there now. It's really much more beyond that, and perhaps there's a rising tides benefit all ships, right?
Sure. I know the media loves a good competition story, and it's fun to think about Lilly versus Novo. The reality is, as was mentioned earlier, I don't know, there's 10, 12 million people in the United States on these incretin medicines, globally, tens of millions more, but we're talking about a problem that's measured in the billions. So our penetration rate is like 2%. And so as fun as it is to talk about how we're carving up that 2%, I wake up every day trying to figure out what we can do to open up the 98%. And that takes a lot of different things. It takes driving cultural change to recognize obesity as a chronic disease deserving of treatment. It takes policy changes to enable reimbursement. It takes education to teach the front line of healthcare, which is woefully undersized, not just in the United States, but more so abroad, that's going to have to figure out how to treat this many people living with obesity and complications. We have manufacturing unlocks to reach that many people. And of course, we need a diverse set of medicines that are tailored to individuals. We have to do all those things. And so we can sort of engage in who's winning Friday's TRX report. But the bigger idea here is to figure out how to open this up and get to those 98% of people who have never had these medicines. And that's hard. By 2050, 3 of the top 6 countries by population of the world are Indonesia, Nigeria, and Pakistan. How many of you have honestly had a conversation about incretins in those countries? Like, we've even begun to open up the long tail of improvements that we can drive together in human health.
That's a really interesting perspective. Last night at dinner, there was also an interesting conversation around initial weight loss and the success of meeting a weight loss goal, and then maintenance. Mm-hmm. And maintenance being a period unto itself that could potentially be a different patient profile versus maybe the initial patient profile for the achieving weight loss goal. How do you think about that today? Because you made the point about having a multi-product company April 1st.
Yeah, I think this was an idea that multiple people had, is that maybe I want to, and it's seen in other disease states where you have like induction versus maintenance therapy. Why not think about that in the context of obesity, where somebody may use a really powerful agent to, drive rapid weight loss, but at some point when they've reached, their individual goal, whether that's defined by a target weight or some other thing that's motivating their desire to lose weight, maybe they want to move to something that's like a little less prominent in their day-to-day. It's just, I'm going to put this pill alongside the other drugs I take. I take Crestor every morning or rosuvastatin and just throw it in and sort of like not have to think about this as like a deliberate piece of my life anymore, but something that I'm where I want to be and I just want to stay there as easily as possible. So we presented data at the European Congress of Obesity a few weeks ago showing results from a couple of different studies, one of which asked the question, can I dose down on a drug like Zepbound after I reach my target weight? The other one was, can I transition from an injectable like Wegovy or Zepbound to, in this case, our oral GLP-1 Foundeo? And what we showed is patients moving from 2.4 milligrams of Wegovy to Foundeo maintained all but 0.9 kilograms of their weight loss after 1 year. So keeping substantially all the weight off, basically, with the convenience of an oral pill instead of a weekly injection. So we think that is an option that people are interested in. People may start their journey on orals, particularly if they need to lose like 10 to 15% of their weight. They may choose to maintain or stay on their journey with orals through switching.
Yeah, it's going to be really intriguing stuff and dynamic as the science pans out. I want to pivot maybe a little bit away from portfolio. I think we're hot off the heels of ASCO, and of course, China has a very big role to play now as a global contributor to the engine of R&D, and of course, we're going to see that here at ADA as well. So, how are you thinking about China in the future and their future role to play?
Well, certainly, it's no secret to anyone in this room that China is playing a huge role now in not just discovery but clinical development. And if you look at the licensing activity of large pharma, like it's increasingly being dominated by substrate originating in China. Historically, we know that a lot of that substrate was originally sort of Me Tooism, iterating derivatives of published structures and sequences. But I think that probably there's a turning point coming where China will probably start to also lead with some more innovative ideas. Some of that is driven just by the cost and the amount of empiricism that they can use. Obviously, there's strong science there now, but it's just their ability to test different permutations of things at scale and speed is pretty remarkable. So I expect we'll start to see some things coming out of China that are like, that's an interesting idea. Much like we've seen sort of like PDL1 plus VEGF, sort of originated in China. Like those sorts of plays of like, oh, can I take a cardiometabolic antibody targeting something and decorate it with incretins and then do this twist and things like that. I think you're just going to see that at a lot more speed and scale in China, which is going to be something that we have to pay attention to. Lilly is certainly engaged in China in a variety of different projects, and we expect it. There's a lot of interesting substrate coming from there.
Yeah. Well, we're kicking off ADA. I'm obligated to say something about AI. In our prep call, Ken was challenging me on just the broadness of using the term AI, which it can certainly mean a bunch of different things. And he was really wanted to scope the conversation around AI to something more specific. And he rattled off a bunch of topics. So you have different perspectives on each one of those specific topics as related to AI. Care to tell us how you think about it?
I think most of us are using AI now in our daily lives, and it's the topic du jour, in most forums I go to, but I do like to drive to a little more specificity because I think of AI in a lot of different ways. If we move sort of left to right in our pharma value chain, we're starting to employ tools in the discovery space that are pretty interesting. We can take LLM-like principles and apply that to medicinal chemistry and iteration, of whether it's small molecule structures or peptides, and we actually now have examples in our pipeline where, in hit optimization so far, like the best looking compound actually came out of one of these approaches on one of our efforts. This is real and happening, but that's not where our business stops. We develop medicines, we're using AI in the clinical trial space, we're using it in things as mundane as the regulatory space. When you're filling out 52 submissions for orforglipron around the world, using a single sort of dossier to populate a bunch of regulatory stuff with LLMs is something we do. And of course, we use it in the commercial side of things. I wake up and read your news, or because every evening I read the news coming from Fenix, which is AI enabled and helpful and a good example of how we can use technology to aggregate things. But the thing that I'm most interested in the field of obesity is, up until now, our clinical trials have largely been pretty similar. We take a study and we say, here's Matthew, and then we look a year later, how much of Matthew is left? What percentage of Matthew did we lose? And we force everybody to sort of follow the same titration schedule of the drug, et cetera, et cetera. We know that in the real world, people are using these medicines in many different ways, and I think we need to do a better job capturing that variability, because variability is what can inform models. And I do envision a future world in obesity where there are models that can actually inform people of how to get from their starting weight to whatever their goal weight is in the in the best way possible, in consideration of their own individual weight trajectories, their own tolerability experience with the medicine. So I'm really keen to think about how we bring data now to what could be sort of digital coaches for weight loss, because as you think about this problem, again, we go back to the scale thing. There are many people in sub-Saharan Africa that are going to be dealing with overweight and obesity and complications. There's not a lot of primary care doctors there, but there's a lot of smartphones. And so how do we start to deploy, medicines like a small molecule GLP-1 at scale with AI-driven tools that can help people get to where they want to go?
The future. As Lilly is the powerhouse it is, I'm always really curious as to some of the challenges that Lilly just thinks about on day in, day out. And of course, it's not all sunshine and rainbows. There's risk out there. And how does, what's risk that's facing Lilly today?
Well, there's competitive risk, which is good for patients, but my job is also to try and stay on the forefront of that competitive risk. So, you're always thinking, my goal is to try and outmode ourselves as fast as possible. And so you're always, thinking about what would be the big unlock from a competitor that could put you in jeopardy. We've made a lot of things that I think put us in a good, durable position in the field of overweight and obesity. Some of it's what I talked about, the investments we're making in manufacturing and commercial capabilities at scale and a broad portfolio. But the reality is if somebody discovered a really great small molecule GIP, GLP-1, amylin, triple agonist in a single molecule that could be scaled for pennies, that's like a huge disruptive event. So you have to stay abreast of that stuff and not get to have the humility to know that there are so many people around the world trying to create something that's better than what we have today.
Sure.
And so we need to make sure we're the ones that find it. There's other areas of risk I find interesting too. We are able to incubate what I would call more like riskier bets or more sort of reality disrupting approaches to treating not just specialty diseases, but big diseases now. So, I'll point to the data we shared from Verve 102 a few weeks ago. The idea that someday you might think about tuning your metabolic health in a more durable way that could be measured in months, it could be measured in your whole lifetime. The idea that you could take a single medicine and permanently lower your LDL cholesterol and plausibly your risk of a cardiovascular event by 60 or 70%. It's pretty exciting to me, and I think there's more of those ideas to be unlocked beyond lipid management. How do we move more towards the vaccine space? I know vaccines are not, there's a lot of controversy about them, but imagine checking out at Kroger someday and saying get your annual, diabetes, obesity, and lipid, vaccine that. So I think that's one of the exciting things we have at Lilly right now is that because we have a core business that's running an a proximal portfolio, pipeline that looks good, we can incubate some of these crazier ideas.
Yeah.
And we're doing a lot of BD in order to sort of infuse our early efforts with things, one and done treatments in multiple myeloma, to do in vivo CAR T, or to do, like I said, with Verve. That's a different type of risk that we want to be on the forefront of.
Okay, well, we're just a bit out of time. It's not Lilly Diabetes anymore. It's definitely Lilly Cardiometabolic Health, and Ken's at the helm of it, directing it through the future of obesity. So this is a great session. I really like doing this, Ken. Maybe we should kick off ADA again next year. And with that, I think we'll conclude. Thanks again.